Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sanyavari Paschachara Satarine. It's dark in here, isn't it? Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadvaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Excuse me. 1 minute. We want to brighten everything up. So, in today's class, I want to segue from the class we had on Monday, and I need to remind you what we spoke about, and also for those of you who weren't here on Monday. And I want to segue into a very important topic, and that topic is unity and diversity. We had spoken on Monday about a form of Maya which we could call subjectivity, or some people call naive realism, to think that our views are actually objective, when in fact they're being filtered through our conditioning, past experiences, and so forth. And often we argue because of the way we see the world, and specifically as devotees, because of the way we see the philosophy, or the way we see what Prabhupada says. And so because we understand it in a particular way, and someone may not understand it in that way, we may consider that we're right and they're wrong. We may consider there's even something wrong with them, that they don't agree with us. And we had discussed that a lot of things Prabhupada says may resonate with something within us, but that something within us may not be healthy, and it may come out in an unhealthy way. Unfortunately. It's not funny, actually. It's unfortunate, but it does. And we've seen manifestations of it. If I have a tendency, like we see with terrorism, if I have a tendency towards violence, if there's anything in Scripture that seems to support that, then that tendency becomes strengthened. Strengthened to such a degree that if God wants me to do it, nothing could be wrong. And I lose all sense of guilt and judgment and empathy. And so it can have disastrous effects. So we're not really experiencing that individually or in a movement, but it's in other subtle ways we may be. So the discussion we had was how our own inebrities, our own impurities, our own lack of balance or lack of whatever, a lack of purity anarthas can interfere with our understanding, and therefore we could get the wrong understanding or apply things wrongly. So now I wanted to bring that to the next level. And I think this is the obvious level it has to go to. And this is one of the biggest challenges that we face as an organization, and any organization faces, any community, country, etc. faces. And that is how, seeing that we're so different, that we can be reading the same books and have different ideas on the same topic, understanding that culturally and in other ways we're conditioned to see things in a specific way. How do we then go forward with that? Because it seems, as I said, the other side's wrong. Because it's so obvious to us that it's a certain way. We had mentioned an interesting phenomena, one of the most interesting phenomena that I've seen now today in ISKCON, or maybe I just haven't been keeping my eyes open, but I've been a little more involved in understanding and having to participate in discussions about whether women can or cannot be Diksha Gurus. And an interesting thing I was told happened, that in North America at the GBC meeting, there was a unanimous decision that they should be. In the equivalent of a similar meeting in India, it was 80+% against it. And it's quite unusual. And then you have to well, maybe it's not as unusual as we think, but you stand back and the first thing that comes to mind is, oh yeah, it's a different culture. And so now Prabhupada's saying something and it is or it is not resonating with the cultural conditioning, or you could even use the word cultural bias. So in Western culture, it resonates more. Women are in more positions of power. It's more of an egalitarian culture. And the Westerners will look at the things that Prabhupada said with all the boys and girls, the girls are as good as the boys, and those kinds of statements. That coming from the other cultural background, as we mentioned, where women were traditionally not in those roles, and it wasn't considered healthy for society, and you could, take the ramifications of divorce, abortion, and so forth, and say what has happened by giving women this kind of freedom. Let's say so many problems. The other side will say, well, by giving them this freedom, they're preaching and they're doing amazing service. So the cultural paradigms affect what you see, how you see it. It also affects what you notice, that Prabhupada said, how that affects you emotionally when you read it, and how it affects you intellectually, and how much importance you give to it, if even anything. Because some devotees from one side were saying, well, the certain things that Prabhupada said were not meant to be applied today. It was time, place, circumstance. The other side is saying, no, the exact point is its time, place, and circumstance, which is why it has to be applied today, because the circumstance is even more degraded or worse or more liberal than when Prabhupada was here. And a less inclusive idea in society today will detract people, and they'll say, look, there's so many people that aren't joining our movement because we're holding on to what might be seen as very archaic values that are not really relatable or applicable or reasonable. So this is going on. So you look at it and you say, okay, this makes sense. There's obviously a cultural bias. This is not a judgment on one side or the other, just saying it's a cultural bias by which we filter what we understand Prabhupada wants. And to us, on either side of the coin, it's very clear. It's as clear as day. And when you're on one side of the coin, you're always saying, I just don't understand why they say this. And then the other side of the coin says, either I just don't understand why they say this, or they say, I understand why they say it because they don't know the philosophy. So they've said that also. Actually, you don't know the philosophy. That's why you say it. In other words, coming from this filter, or someone may say, no, I'm not filtered, you're filtered. But that's the point I'm making. That coming from that subjective view, you may think, I'm not subjective, I'm objective. So that means the other party is subjective. Of course, the other party thinks the same thing about you. So my whole point is, Hare Krishna, it's a mess. That's my whole point. My whole point is, this is the world. This is the way it works. And we're seeing that it works this way not only in politics, not only in other religions, but it works this way in ISKCON. Or at least it has come to this point where this is an obvious problem. Maybe more severe or more difficult to resolve than any other problem we've had. When it would always be about women, right? You women, you're the cause of all the problems. Why did God have to create you? So, only kidding. So, Prabhupada used the term, I don't think he coined it because it's used often, he used the term unity and diversity. And this is the solution to this dilemma. And why are we talking about this on a class when you all thought, well, we're supposed to be talking about Maya? Well, this is a big way that Maya affects us. And as you probably all know, Prabhupada said nothing from the outside could stop the movement. It could only stop from the inside. And what was he referring to? He was referring to that we don't get along. We create schisms, we divide. And then those divided amongst themselves become weak. Those who are bunches of sticks together become strong. So Prabhupada talked about this not in isolated incidents. It was a theme that came up, and it came up often because these things were happening. Devotees were having difficulty getting along, especially leaders, and it was a big concern, obviously, if leaders don't get along. So then Prabhupada wrote several letters on this principle of unity and diversity, and it's important to discuss because when you come to a point where two sides are diametrically opposed and are not going to compromise, you waste your time in trying to debate the issue. Some people change sides, but very few. Some of you know that there is an organization on the periphery of ISKCON who believes in priests initiating, or devotees can initiate on behalf of Prabhupada. We also believe that as Diksha Gurus, but they believe that when you're initiating on behalf of Prabhupada, the people you initiate actually become Prabhupada's disciples. And we had discussed that in the last class. I believe it was the last class, and the history of that and why that came about and the logic or illogic of it, depending on how you look at it, and the situations in ISKCON that were the fodder for that, or the soil for which that could grow, the fall downs, the Prabhupada being pushed out of the center, and the thinking that Prabhupada could not have wanted people to initiate, because otherwise why would they have fallen down? And even if they didn't fall down, it created a problem in which Prabhupada's position was minimized in the wake of new gurus taking the limelight. So they looked at that and said, no, this couldn't be what Prabhupada wanted. And they came up with their reasoning and verses and purports. So what is, this is not any longer a discussion on the merits or demerits of that philosophy, but what transpired was what was considered a deviation from the Siddhanta that Prabhupada gave. But there were a lot of, not a lot, but not a little. There were people who have taken it seriously. Very good devotees have taken it seriously. Friends of mine have adopted it. Friends of mine took to it before and changed their mind, but as I said, that was a small number. So now you have an issue, which we've seen, is that if you bring together the Ritviks and the, I don't know what you call the non-Ritviks, the Guru supporters, the Diksha Guru supporters, and the non-Diksha Guru supporters, if you bring them together and have discussion, they may be very nice devotees, they may have very nice discussion, very respectful, but at the end of the day, the chances of anybody being convinced of the other side's arguments are virtually zero. So I say virtually, meaning it's possible someone might be convinced, and some occasionally have, going one side to the other. But generally, in mass, not a lot happens. So naturally, then one would think, okay, there's a stalemate here. This party is not going to agree, that party is not going to agree. Where do you take the discussion now? To me, and many devotees, the logical step is unity and diversity, to figure out how we can work together without being inimical towards one another. And that may take various forms. It may take the form of separate organizations, or building a room within the organization, or building many rooms within the organization. We're not here to talk about that, but I'm here to talk about the principle of unity and diversity. And I had mentioned to you on Monday that a lot of things I talk about can be taken as criticisms of the current position in ISKCON, and they're not meant to be that. They're meant to be histories for you, who most of you are who listen to me are younger, in your 20s and 30s, which means what I'm talking about now, you're going to see in different forms in the future. So my talking to you is meant more to be educational in terms of how you will understand how to deal with these issues. And some of you might say, oh, I'm dealing with them right now today. That may be true. Yes, you are. And you will be. And they're important points that could make a big difference in us getting along and not getting along. And I want to discuss them today because the topic of Maya, this is probably one of the biggest forms of Maya that enters our movement. And we're talking not about the Maya of the devotee falling down or devotee being illusioned by sense gratification. We're talking about good devotees who that doesn't happen to, having difficulty in coming to some kind of resolution with devotees they disagree with. That kind of Maya, Prabhupada is saying, has the most destructive force, at least upon our movement. And maybe one of the most difficult things to deal with. Just sensual difficulties, just chant some more rounds, go take a cold shower and don't eat breakfast. You'll be fine. But this is not so easy. You're going to need more than a cold shower, fasting from breakfast and good rounds. So I want to talk about unity and diversity. And I also want to talk, getting back to what we talked about on Monday, there's a sequel to a few things on Monday that I didn't address deeply enough about dealing with devotees who you perceive are just not really acting in the most Krishna conscious way, could be better, or you blatantly feel they're not Krishna conscious, or you're disappointed in their actions, and which would also mean disappointed in the way they're thinking about certain issues. So that's the topic today. As you know, I often talk about things which I am confronting in my own service, and this is one of the things, and I wanted to share my realizations in the hopes that maybe a lot of what I could give you would not be something that is so easily understandable. Perhaps it may be, perhaps it may not be. We'll take the chance. But in any case, we're discussing Prabhupada's words, so however we slice them, however we look at them, whenever context we look at them, they're all valuable. So this unity and diversity, we need to explain what Prabhupada meant by it. You can understand it in general just by hearing what it means. People unified, although they're different. And so one of the major points that Prabhupada made in explaining this is that we will be different. To think that that every devotee would be the same just because we have the same philosophy is incorrect. He actually said it's impersonalism. He said the fact that we're personalist means we're individual souls, and the fact that we're individual souls is why we're different. So we shouldn't strive that all of us are the same. Oh, everyone should be like me, or everyone should be like so-and-so Maharaj. Well, number one, that will never happen because we're all different. And number two, although it sounds like a good idea, if we're all the same, we all agree, we all get along, the fact is we may be blind to so many things. And then when you have diversity, you have other people say, but what about that? What about this? Oh, we didn't think about that. Yeah, because you're all the same, you all get along, you all agree with one another, and when somebody is doing something wrong or misunderstanding something, you don't see it. So Prabhupada wanted us to acknowledge that we are different because we're individuals, and that is not an impediment to the unity. And so he said the unity, which I think is obvious to all of us, is that even those you disagree with, even those who do things which you feel are not mature or not expected of a senior devotee and so forth, in most cases, I don't want to say in every case, because it's not true in every case, but let's just say in many, many cases, they may have faults, they may not do something perfectly, but you could see that they're trying to please Prabhupada. That's their intention. They think they're doing the right thing. Sometimes they're just helpless. They don't know they're doing the wrong thing. And sometimes they may be doing what we consider wrong, and they consider it right, and they sincerely believe this is what Prabhupada wants, and they're doing it. And in ISKCON, we made so many mistakes, but when you look back at those mistakes, generally, no one will say those devotees weren't sincere. We will say they were immature, or they lacked knowledge, or they lacked experience. And they did things maybe to disturb the public, or they did things in the name of spreading Krishna consciousness that may have stepped on the toes of some devotees, or alienated some devotees, or even caused some devotees to leave ISKCON. But you'll never hear, it's rare, although I've heard many, many bad things about devotees, and so have you. But in all those descriptions, people rarely ever say or observe, or maybe they just don't have the nerve, or maybe it's so wrong and untrue. No one says it. People don't say they weren't sincere. Sometimes they say the problem was they were sincere. And sometimes people say sincerity is the worst quality of a religious person. If you're going the wrong direction sincerely, it's better you're not sincere. It's better you're lazy. Maybe you'll get off the road and just go to sleep, and when you wake up you realize, I went in the wrong direction. So, there is a joke about sincere religious people that it is a problem. It energizes their fanaticism and their sometimes just blatant stupidity, or they're sincerely obnoxious. And sometimes we see that with other people. But at least the point here is that we can recognize, okay, in most cases, the person that I don't agree with, I can't really say they're a bad person. I can't really say they don't love Prabhupada. I can't really say they're not trying to please Prabhupada. I can't really say they're not trying to do what's best for conditioned souls. It's generally you won't find that. You'll see, no, they're actually a nice person who's sincerely trying to serve. It's just the way they do it doesn't seem right to me, or it's not pleasing to me. So that's an obstacle we have to overcome. And, Shastra says the devotee has all good qualities. And sometimes you look at the devotee and go, either the Shastra's wrong or he's not a devotee. Can only be one of the two. Shastra's wrong, he's a devotee and he's got bad qualities. Or Shastra's right and he must not be a devotee. Of course, those aren't the only two choices. But when you read Shastra and the Shastra says the devotee has all good qualities, and then here's a devotee who's supposed to have all good qualities, and I don't see them all. I see some, but I see he's missing a lot. And in fact, I see some qualities that I would consider actually bad. Now I'm bewildered. And how am I supposed to understand? And this, as I said on Monday, could prove to me that this devotee's wrong. Because if he were right, why would he act that way? Why would he say what he said if he was actually right? So we may start to condemn, put down, and so forth. So when Prabhupada was questioned about devotees who were not always doing everything properly, not that they weren't doing things properly, but maybe according to us, we saw something was lacking and we wanted them to do more things properly. When Prabhupada was questioned by this, the answer he came up with is, there's two answers. One, well, look at their devotees. They're giving their life to Krishna. And that's from Shastra. The greatest, of all the qualities of devotees, greatest quality is that he's a devotee. He's giving his life to Krishna. And so you think, okay, this devotee is giving his life to Krishna. That's what I should be focusing on. That's what makes him great. And that's true. And that's Shastra. You find that in many places. In Shastra, and you find it in, Prabhupada mentioned that in the letter as well. But there's something else he mentioned, which is the same thing, but it sheds different light on it, which is what I was just talking about. Prabhupada, when answering this question, sometimes said, You have to look at the sincerity of the devotee. That's his, you could say, calling card. He's sincere. Okay, this devotee did this bad thing, that bad thing. Is he sincere? Oh yes, I can see that he's sincere. And so Prabhupada said that's his main good qualification, that he's sincere. So this is something I want to offer you, which I believe is going to save your life sometimes, because you're going to be in situations where a devotee is going to do something who is a good devotee, or a devotee is going to say something and he's a good devotee, and you're going to think that devotee is crazy. Or you're going to think, how could they say that? How could anyone in their right mind who is a follower of Prabhupada say anything remotely like what this devotee said? Or how could someone in that position have acted that way or replied to a question this way? It's inevitable. Inevitably, it's going to happen, and I'm sure it's already happened, and if it hasn't happened, it's inevitable unless you are so transcendental you see no fault in anyone. What do you do when that happens? And how does it happen? Well, the higher up that person is, the more likely it is to happen, because the more you expect that person to be as perfect as possible, to be as Siddhantic as possible, to be as reasonable and balanced and sense-controlled, etc., and nice and kind and compassionate and forgiving. You expect that. The higher they go up, the more you expect it. You expect it of Prabhupada disciples, maybe more than others. You might even expect it more of men than women. It just depends on how you see the world. More of temple presidents than GBCs, more of GBCs than temple presidents, more of gurus than GBCs, more of sannyasis than grihastas. Obviously, that's going to be there in your mind. And so then they do something, they say something, and it doesn't line up with those expectations. That's life. That's going to happen. What did Prabhupada say? He said the most important qualification is their sincerity. And so then you're going to say, well, how do I know they're sincere? Well, let's for the sake of the discussion now, we can address that later. For the sake of the discussion now, let's make the assumption that if someone's practicing devotional service, someone's steady in their service, someone's following the principles, chanting their rounds, they're trying, they must be sincere. They're not in ISKCON to take money from ISKCON. They're not here to take power, position. They're here to serve. You may not like the way they serve. You may not like the way they give class or the things they say, but they're here to serve. That's why they're here. So you can acknowledge that they're sincere, even though I don't like what they said. Even sometimes what they say boils my blood. Actually, it sounds sometimes. I mean, I've had that experience personally. I've heard sometimes devotees say something, and to me personally, it sounded absolutely ridiculous. Like, I've never heard such a thing. I never heard Prabhupada say that. I've been a devotee 5 decades, and now you're telling me something that, how come I never heard Prabhupada say that? How come I never heard Prabhupada say anything remotely like that? And on an emotional level, it's kind of sickening. And I have this sickening thought towards this devotee, like, how dare you? How dare you put those words in Prabhupada's mouth? So this is real. Even advanced devotees feel this way. I have a story. It's so funny. Prabhupada wanted a devotee to do something, and he didn't want to do it. It was like, giving money to somebody. And he said, I'm not going to give money to that devotee. He'll misuse it. And Prabhupada said, give him money. I want him to have the money, because this devotee collected the money. And Prabhupada said, he said, no, I'm not going to give it. And they're going back and forth. And the devotee said, he stood up and he said, I quit. He said, then I quit. And Prabhupada said, and if you quit, I quit. And Prabhupada said, sit down. That was this devotee. He could be heated and angry. You can imagine you get angry with your own guru. What to speak of Prabhupada? So he's a very good devotee, so, in a nanosecond he realizes what he just did. He said, Prabhupada, please forgive me for this. I'm just so proud and angry. You know what Prabhupada said? He said, no, it's good. You're enthusiastic. So Prabhupada didn't see it as bad. He just saw that he's so concerned about spending Krishna's money that he became angry. And he thought this other devotee is just useless with money. I'm not going to give it to him. Because Prabhupada's asking him to give the money that devotee collected with his Sankirtan party. So, there's some attachment to that money. He wants Prabhupada to have it all. He was collecting for a particular project. But my point is that sometimes you'll run into a situation with another devotee and you'll get very upset. And it's not because you're being offensive. It's just because you're being enthusiastic. And you feel very strongly about something in how something should be done in our movement. And someone comes along and just throws a wrench in that idea. And it's just, sometimes you can't help it. So I'm saying this not so now you think, oh, if Mahatma Prabhu feels like that, well, what's the hope for me? I'll hang up my bead bag, it's over, and we'll just go out there and enjoy. No, I'm saying it actually comes because you want to see Krishna consciousness spread. It's because you're sincere that these things happen sometimes, this kind of agitation and disturbance with another devotee. And then that devotee does or says something, and you're thinking, I cannot believe that they said that. And you're totally disturbed by what they said. He said, if this devotee were in charge of ISKCON, I would never be in. I would leave in a minute, and the whole ISKCON would finish in a year. That's how you just feel that way. You cannot not feel that way based on your understanding. I could be totally wrong. I'm not saying I'm not, but I'm saying these feelings do happen. So what did Prabhupada say? What is the remedy? What do you do when you're in that situation? You have to see this person is a sincere devotee. There was a conversation we were having yesterday with a godbrother, and he was saying that he has an experience exactly like this with another devotee. And this is how he feels toward this devotee, whose opinions are so different from his that to this devotee, his opinions are, for lack of a better word, obnoxious, basically, in his mind. Or his emotional experience of hearing this devotee speak is like I need to like lay down now and recover from that. That just is nauseating. And it sounds offensive, but again, I'm just saying this is how sometimes we may naturally feel out of our enthusiasm, out of our dedication, because we think something is wrong within ISKCON, and then the thing we think is wrong, that person is promoting that very thing, and he's saying, no, that's what's going to make ISKCON better. How do you take that? You get nauseated, basically, for lack of a better word. So he told a beautiful story. He said he saw that devotee in Mayapur. I guess it was during prasadam or something. They were washing their hands. I got the impression they were washing their plates after prasadam. And he said something to the effect, he said, I totally disagree with everything you say, and basically you drive me crazy with what you say. He said, but I just want you to know, as a devotee, I respect you, and I know you're just doing this because you believe this is correct, and you believe this is what Prabhupada wants, and you're just trying to serve him. And I know that, and I want you to know that, even though I disagree with you, I want you to know that I see that. And the devotee beautifully responded, and he said, I feel the same way about you. I respect you, I love you, I honor you, even though we totally disagree, because I know you're doing it for Prabhupada. So that is where that is where the rubber hits the wheel of unity and diversity. At that point, when I can look at that devotee who says something that makes me nauseous, but at the same time I can say, I know he's sincere. I know he loves Prabhupada. I know that's why he's saying this. I just don't see it. I don't understand it that way. I don't have that reference. And then we have to say, this is a reality. This is the way the world is working. We can't live in a in a hole and think it's not like this. And we can't think that I have to make the whole world of ISKCON see things my way for ISKCON to be vital. But rather what Prabhupada's saying is for ISKCON to be vital, we're going to have to figure out how to love and respect those who see things differently. And not only that, but appreciate that difference actually has a place. And I'll get to your comments and questions, don't worry. I had mentioned on Monday when we were talking about the pros and cons of the female Diksha Guru issue, which is really, it's really not even, the focus is on can women be Diksha Gurus, but it's a broader focus on just the place of women in general in ISKCON. And so I was mentioning, maybe I'll mention a little further, I don't know if I explained everything, but there are a lot of men in our movement who were 100% convinced that so many problems we have is because we give women too much freedom. And protection of women in the home as wives, mothers, that's just like the perfect place for them. And putting women out in the forefront is problematic. And you can, just look at the corporate world, You have a wife at home and you have a what do they call it? A office wife, office spouse. You have one at work, and illicit sex, abortion, and so forth. Yeah, so there's no question that previous social values prevented that, but it's a different world today, no question about that. And Prabhupada did encourage women to preach. And so what you find in the real world, and I think this is really, really important topic, what do you find in the real world? Well, if you study, quote unquote, the real world, you find out that there are different kinds of people. And you will find that there are many, many men who do not want their wives to work. When they get married, they say, you are never going to work. So ladies, if you don't want to work, find a man who doesn't want you to work. And if you want a career, don't find the man who you're going to drive crazy if you work. But there are plenty of men who believe in these values. No, we will have a family. You will stay home. You will never work. I will always provide for you no matter what. Even if I have to work 108 jobs a day, I will provide for you. You will take care of the home. You will take care of the family. This is what I want. And there are plenty of women who will say, hallelujah, that's what I want to do. And there are plenty of women, when you tell them that, they will vomit on your face. Okay, I'm being a little graphic. But this is true. You tell I just spoke there's a woman, she's a 6-year disciple. I believe she has 1 master's and 2 PhDs. So, obviously she's thinking about, becoming a professor, working in research. They're medical degrees, I believe. And she may not naturally be the kind of person that wants to stay at home and just take care of kids. She's got intellectual capacity. And so if you give a lecture about how women should stay home and take care of kids, she will go home depressed and probably not even want to come to the temple anymore. That woman who was the corporate woman who went crazy there in total anxiety, dealing with that, competing with the men, trying to be a man, to live in a man's world, when she hears that class, she'll say, hallelujah, thank God, this is what I've been looking for. Whatever your belief is on this issue, you have no need to try to change the mindset of anyone, because in Prabhupada's movement, he's allowed for both of those. He's encouraged women, Go girl. I was thinking you could make a poster of Prabhupada. Of course, we wouldn't do this because whoever made the poster would be criticized for this. But you could make a poster with Prabhupada, with his hand up or something, and the caption would be, Go girl, and maybe like a picture of Jamuna leading kirtan in front of 10,000 people or something like that. But my point is that if you look at Prabhupada's teachings and you look at Prabhupada's movement, you can validate both of those mentalities, which is, and Prabhupada validated it because Prabhupada is smart enough to know that everybody's not the same. So can we have a community where the values are that women stay home? No female in this community is going to set an example of being a corporate woman or this or that. Could we? Of course you could. Do you have to join it? Of course not. You only join it because those are your values, and those values are right there. You go right to Prabhupada's books. They're right there. And you're supported by Prabhupada's words. Can we have a preaching community where women are temple presidents? They're in charge of departments of philosophy and religion at the local university. They're giving lectures on television. Can we have that? They're giving initiation, God forbid. Can we have that? Of course we can. What is the justification? Prabhupada. He gave it to us. He encouraged that. He was happy when they did it. So that's what Prabhupada means by unity and diversity. So when you appreciate, this is part of Krishna conscious culture, and you appreciate that not every devotee is going to be as conservative or as liberal as I am, and not every devotee is going to think that, the goal of Krishna consciousness is just to be nice to one another. Or not every guru is going to be that soft, gentle devotee that you may value. Other devotees may value the guru that slaps them in the face, that slaps them with their words, that tears them apart, because, that shatters them to the ground because they feel that's what I need. And you see that guru doing that and you think, how dare he? How can he do that? And the guru knows this is what the disciple needs. This devotee told a story. He said, I was so puffed up and so proud, and Prabhupada's relationship with me was always chastising me. No matter what I did, he would chastise me. He said, I once came back from being gone and gave Prabhupada $108,000. And the only thing Prabhupada did was tell me, the color of your dhoti is wrong, change it. And then he said, then I did something else, in spite of all this service, I did something else. He said, Prabhupada wouldn't even look at me for 3 months, wouldn't even talk to me. He said, because I was so proud, that was the medicine I needed. It was the perfect medicine. Now, we may look at that and think, oh my God, that is so heavy. I don't know if I could deal with that. And Prabhupada wouldn't have done it to you if you couldn't have dealt with it. He didn't do it to me, but I wasn't that close. But if he did it to me, I don't know if I could take it. This devotee could take it, and so Prabhupada did it, and this devotee needed it. And so now this devotee, in his relation with other devotees, he's tough because that's how he was dealt with by Prabhupada. And it's very purifying to hear him talk, even though it's difficult because it's so heavy. And devotees today aren't used to this kind of heavy guru relationship. But he's a different person. He's a different experience. He has a different experience with Prabhupada. And so unity and diversity means to appreciate the natural differences we have and that we may not like everyone. But there is also a solution, which I just spoke about, but I want to take that solution one step further. In the Shastra, it says something very interesting, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and other places. It uses the word swajati. Swajati means your own kind, your own people. And so it's been acknowledged by our acharyas, fortunately it's been acknowledged by our acharyas, that you don't have to be close to all the devotees. It's actually unnatural to be close to people who are so different from you. It's not like when you come to ISKCON, it's like, okay, now we're going to force you to be unnatural. You don't want to be a brahmachari? Well, that means definitely we're going to force you to be a brahmachari. because you don't want to be one. So the best thing is to be one. That's not what ISKCON is. Like, you don't like this devotee here? Well, we're going to put you as roommates because you need to learn how to be humble. It's not exactly like that. I mean, that could be a lesson for a few days, but it's not the way it's supposed to be. The way it's supposed to be is you find your swajata, your people, the people you relate to. And those are the people you associate with. That's where you get your natural energy. And those, and we spoke about this on Monday, those you, maybe, the ones that make you vomit, quote unquote. Should we, I don't think we should title this lecture, The Devotees That Make You Vomit. Maybe Those Who Make You Vomit could be the subtitle. Maybe not, maybe it's offensive. But you understand what I'm saying. Those who say something that disturb you. Obviously, those are not the ones that naturally you want to be closest with. And you can find so many things about them to appreciate, no doubt. But it may be very hard to have intimate association. So Shastra says that's natural. It's not offensive. It's natural. Don't think it's offensive. It's only offensive if you offend them. But to say, well, it's like, I decided to marry Janava. Does that mean I offended every other eligible, what was the, whenever we were married 27 years ago? 27 years ago, did I offend every eligible woman in ISKCON by choosing Janava to marry? Of course not. So you're not offending anyone by not choosing them to be your close friend. You're offending someone when you offend them, not by distancing yourself and respecting them from a distance. That's not offense. It's only natural you'll want to be close to certain devotees. So I think that's important. They don't feel obligated. So in the unity and diversity, naturally, we will gravitate to be with people like ourselves. But Prabhupada wants us to appreciate that not everybody's like us. Other people have other values, other missions, other aspects of ISKCON they want to be part of or they want to emphasize because everyone's nature is different. And therefore, if we can't appreciate that without trying to fight them, no, you're wrong, put you down, why are you doing that? Then there's hope. Now, you might say, but sometimes they are wrong. Okay, that's a different thing. If it's totally opposidantic and therefore thereby destructive and it cannot be allowed because it's a virus that would destroy us. Yeah, obviously, that's different. But we're talking about more of situations where you have devotees on different sides of the issue and they have reliable, valuable arguments for their case. And you understand why those arguments are there. You understand where they're coming from, and you appreciate this devotee is extremely sincere, but I don't resonate at all. I don't see it like that. And can I have my own place? And can he have his own place? And we live happily ever after, understanding that the unity is that we're both sincerely trying to please Prabhupada. To me, in my mind, when you run into these kinds of conflicts, there's no other way out of them. Don't waste your time arguing about who's right or wrong. That's not what Prabhupada wants us to do. Prabhupada wants us to focus our energy on preaching. And so when you focus your energy on unity and diversity, that's focused on preaching because unity is our power. But when you focus on fighting, it takes away energy. And I strongly feel that when we're fighting, Prabhupada would look at us and say, stop it. Focus your mind on helping the conditioned souls. Don't focus your mind on trying to prove that you're right. So I'm going to take your questions now, and I wanted to offer you this thought because you're going to have to deal with this, and this is, I think it's the only way forward in the world of controversy that we will run into. And okay, let me say something else. This is more relatable to those who live in America. I don't know how all of you are following the politics of America, but even if you're following the politics of America, the living in America, you feel on an emotional level. You're emotionally involved in the politics, and there's very, very strong emotions towards Donald Trump, both for and against. I think I can't say the emotions are stronger on one side of the issue or the other, because if one side's stronger, it makes the other side stronger. So let's say we'll just say that there's very strong emotions on both sides. So whatever side of the coin you're on, you have strong emotions. And now, as a devotee, understanding the issues, understanding the different personalities, the political parties, and so forth, you would expect devotees would support one candidate and not the other, but it's not like that. You find there are devotees on both sides of the political spectrum, and you think, how could you support this person? They believe in A, B, C, and D, and they're saying, well, how could you support that person? He believes in C, D, E, F, G, and H. And actually, they're both right. It's just a question of who's more evil. Or no, it's not a question who's lesser. Who's the lesser of the two? Who are you voting for? The lesser of the two evils. There's one candidate I just, personally, I just kind of tired of seeing him every day on the news. So the only reason I wouldn't vote for him is just so I don't have to see him anymore. But not every devotee feels that way about that candidate. And so my point is, even in areas of life in which you would think, oh, of course, all devotees would agree on this, they don't. So, what we would kind of like consider to be the ideal devotee, or what's the word I'm using? The idealized devotee, the prototype devotee will act this way, think this way, say this, say that, eat this, eat that, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, vote this way. It's not like that. It's not coming down that way. And so as we progress as a movement and we have a broader base, congregational base, we see more variety. When I joined, there was one variety of devotee. It was called hippie. If you weren't a hippie, you wouldn't even go to the temple. So it was a pretty homogeneous group. And we didn't really have to deal with these problems. And aside from that, Prabhupada was there. So he's there and he solves all the problems if there is controversy. So this is a reality which we are all going to have to accept and adjust to, that there is no, I was looking for the word stereotypical devotee that thinks exactly like this. Prabhu, do you eat chocolate? Yeah. So, ooh. Oh, okay, all right. Just okay, Then you put that in your head. He's a chocolate eater, so I can't associate with him. Prabhu, do you eat chocolate? Well, yeah, me too. You want to have some? I have some. It's like, take it down the line. So many. Prabhu, you like the Beatles? Yeah. Oh, I got a remastered, version. Devotees are human beings with their own limitations and so forth. So, can we appreciate that without that disturbing the unity? That's the challenge, and that's what Prabhupada meant. Okay, so anything I say more now will just be redundant, and so I have a question. I'm not looking at myself. Have I frozen up yet? Or we have. One of the things I did is I closed all my other apps open on the internet, and I think that helped. And I tuned up the Wi-Fi. Although I'm getting a faster Wi-Fi soon. Oh yeah, it's amazing. Whenever I say Did I freeze up? It's at that moment I freeze up. The gods of freeze attack me. Yeah, so this internet's too slow. That's too bad. And now I'm starting to do programs. People are paying for, and I want to provide them the right facility. Anyway, okay. Now, the interesting thing is now, because I'm on the internet, it slows things up just to look at your comments, which is strange, right? So Christe said, I never thought of sincerity this way before. Yeah, it's extremely important. Extremely important. Hare Krishna to all of you. Samprakash. Sant Samprakash. Hare Krishna. So, Radharaman, formerly known as Nikhil, says, questions relating to differences in devotees' opinions at the institutional level. From what I have learned at the ISKCON Disciple Course, we should take the GBC's decision as Prabhupada's decision. So, if this is the case, then why are there differences in opinions once a GBC has passed a particular resolution? Because not all the GBC have voted for that resolution, number one. And the answer is because we're all individuals. But the institutional policy is, if you're a GBC member or even a temple board member or whatever, even if you disagree, because you're an individual, some people may disagree on some things, you agree to follow. That's your service. So to keep the institution together, Prabhupada said, follow your temple president, follow your GBC, etc. But within ISKCON, there is a facility that if you don't agree with something your temple president has said or done, you can go to the next higher up, whoever that is in your zone, whether it is zonal secretary or GBC. And if your GBC is, well, I agree with your temple president, you could go to the GBC-EC, the executive committee. And if that doesn't work, you could have you and your temple president and an ombudsman speak, or you could go into mediation. There's so many things you could do. Or if it's a case of child abuse, then there's the CPO. If there's a case of sexual abuse, now there's an office to deal with that, sexual abuse by adults, of adult sexual abuse, not child sexual abuse. So this is just a reality that as an organization, even though there may be a rule, and even though there may be a person in charge who is the authority, it's not that necessarily everyone is going to be so adaptable for it. And we just saw a video, maybe many of you have seen it. Shiva Ramswamy came out with a video, and he said that I don't think women who are not liberated souls should initiate. This is why I think this way, and I don't agree with the GBC decision, but I am a loyal ISKCON follower, and therefore whatever they decide, I follow. That's reality. Maybe I should change my name to Sat Prabhu, because I don't think it's healthy that we don't speak about things as they actually are. And I think we have to understand things, because we're all adults, we're all intelligent. We have to understand that there are GBC resolutions that may have passed by a 1% majority. 51% passed it, 49 voted against it. You don't know. You just see the resolution. This GBC resolution about women initiating was not a vast majority. It was a majority, but not vast. There was opposition. There were absentees. They weren't sure. So this is the reality of running an organization. But it is true what you say, but it's not that you don't have a right to think about it and say, I will follow what the GBC said, but I've studied the issue, I've discussed it, and from my perspective, I don't think this is correct. Sometimes GBC, less now than formerly, change decisions or modify decisions as they become more enlightened or as more information is available. So, that's another reality. You can call me Sat Prabhu. Okay. Shouldn't all members of ISKCON just accept what the GBC has passed? Yes and no. I fear that differences in opinions at the institutional level will cause a divide in ISKCON in the future. Yeah. So I can't argue with what you're saying, but the only, whenever you say, shouldn't we all, and then we all say, yes, we should, but Sat Maharaj says, but what's the reality? And the reality is some people don't believe in that resolution. They don't think it's correct. They think it's flawed. They think it could be improved. It may just be one aspect of it, one little thing. And so they're people, and they can't, they have their opinions. What I would say is that I don't think we haven't got to the point in ISKCON where what Maharaj did becomes common. Like this is a former GBC member publicly saying, I don't agree with the GBC. Hold on a second. Usually this is how politics works, but this is how a democracy works, but this is because they believe this is the way to strengthen a democracy, to let people publicly speak. So you have different news stations and editorials and so forth. ISKCON has not come to that point. I don't know if Prabhupada would want us to. I don't know if we're going to see other GBC men coming on and say, this is why I support it, and having debates about it. It could be healthy. It may not be healthy. I can't vote in one way or the other. Although my gut feeling is that Prabhupada may not want us to publicly discuss our laundry, although for years it's something I've always wanted to do because I feel the devotees need to be educated about it. And devotees need to be able to look at the issues as the seniors are looking at them with the same information they have, and have public debates, Krishna West, Krishna East, debate it publicly, threadbare, let everybody hear, make your own decisions. Radharaman, we had a problem. There's a committee I work with, and one of the people on the committee has to, vote on certain issues. And he has a problem because his Guru Maharaj thinks one way and he thinks a different way. So this is so you would say, well, shouldn't you just vote on an issue the way your Guru Maharaj has preached about it and vote that way? And maybe according to the Shastra, you would say yes, but maybe your Guru doesn't want you to do that because that's not the culture he wants to create. He said, you're the future leaders. You take what I've said, put that in your thought bank, discuss it, and use your intelligence to guide the movement. I'm giving you my information based on what I know, based on my realization. Maybe there will be greater acharyas than I who will come and enlighten you in different ways. So that's a unique situation, which we definitely didn't have with Prabhupada at all. Although Prabhupada would ask us, what do you think? So if he asked, we could say, or we could say, whatever you think, Prabhupada. And he would say, no, I want to know what you think. So you'd say, okay, this is what I think. And he would say, that's good or it's not good. And no problem. So this is a unique situation. And so it's like what you say on paper is true. But my point is we have to look at reality. And reality doesn't work that way. And all the problems come up not with what is written on paper and what's in Shastra. The problems come up with the reality. Oh, I don't see it that way. I don't feel that way. But legalistically speaking, yes, all leaders of ISKCON will support GBC resolutions, whether they like them or not. That's your obligation. You may, express your philosophy, your understanding in kind of a camouflage way in speaking Bhagavatam, if you're actually speaking Bhagavatam and people can understand it as they do. As long as it's Siddhanta, you're repeating Prabhupada, that's fine. But to blatantly disagree, that's, even if you do, that's generally not something we would do. So, the movement's working. Okay, here's a GBC resolution. We accept it. I don't agree with it. I make a proposal to amend it. You have the right, you as individual members of ISKCON, You have rights to submit proposals. If you go on the GBC site, it shows you how to write a proposal. You have a right to submit proposals. So you could submit a proposal based on either a new idea or based on an existing resolution. You say, I think this is wrong. I think this is destructive. And you explain why, and you say, I propose this, or I propose this should be amended. You can do that. You all have the power to do that. So, ISKCON's a bit of a democratic process also. So, let's just say, Radharaman, it's a Chinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. Both things can go on, and both things do go on. And that's how we're evolving. So, does that make sense? Also, the thing about the ISKCON Disciple Course, God, I hate to say this. They might cut off my Sika, which is not a problem because my Sika only has a few hairs. How can I say this? The ISKCON Disciple Course partially is meant to help you understand the institution of ISKCON and how it works, because a lot of people don't know. And in doing that, its attempt, which is not bad, is to indoctrinate you as a good member of ISKCON. And being a good member, you should follow the GBC. And perhaps it would be awkward for such young devotees who are taking the course to be told, well, you can also propose resolutions, and you may not necessarily agree with what the GBC says, but you should follow them. And this person's been a devotee 1 year. That's probably not going to work. So, the ISKCON Disciple Course is helping kind of, I don't like using the word indoctrinate because it's sounds like a pejorative term. But you understand, how does ISKCON work? What is the actual position of your guru? What's the position of the GBC? What if your guru disagrees with the GBC? Well, your loyalties are to the GBC. But behind closed doors, there's discussions about that philosophically. No, the guru is absolute. He's higher. He can't be controlled. But now you're living within an organization. So now the philosophy kind of has to adapt to the practical reality of the organization. Because philosophically, the guru is above everyone, even the GBC. But we're not above Prabhupada, and Prabhupada told us to follow the GBC. So it doesn't matter who we are, we have to follow it. But who's absolute for the disciple? The GBC or the guru? According to Shastra, it's the guru. But who's absolute for the movement? The GBC, and the disciples are part of the movement. So it's trying to help the disciples, fit into that situation. But when you discuss it in those smoke-filled rooms, those incense-filled rooms late at night, burning the midnight candle, there's so many nuances and subtleties to it when you're looking at philosophy. So it has to be presented in a way that a younger devotee can maintain the fidelity they have in their guru, at the same time maintain the fidelity they have in the institution that Prabhupada set up as the GBC, as the ultimate managers. And the GBCs and the gurus have to be sensitive also to one another in terms of who controls what and how it's controlled. So these are, it's not black and white. They're sensitive issues. So, and don't think that this kind of disciple course is not a work in progress, because as these topics come up and discussions come up and the movement evolves and we see things being corrected, or we see dysfunctions developing or dysfunctions not being corrected, the course, it'll evolve, because not every guru is 100% happy with exactly how everything is taught. But your teacher's not going to tell you that, because you're a young devotee. That's just going to confuse you, And if you have any question about anything that you might have a doubt about, you can go to your guru and say, we learned this in the Disciples Course. What about this? And he may say, yes, it's true, but these are other considerations, which were probably too much for the younger devotees in the course, or not necessary for them to know. But you, as you're learning the philosophy, you can understand there's more to it. That's natural of education, What you learn in history in grammar school is not the history you learn in your PhD studies. All the good guys don't look so good anymore. So it's something like that. Now, I don't know if I just shook everyone's faith in ISKCON, if the GBC is going to shave my Sika. I'm just trying to be Sat Maharaj because I feel like maybe things that we expect you to know or you should know have never been explained to you. And I'm finding there's a lot of things devotees should know that have not been explained to them, and we have problems because of that. So I'm just trying to be realistic. You're mature adults. I think you could understand. There needs to be a course that helps people understand the position of Guru, the position of GBC, absolute position of the GBC, but the GBC is also comprised of people who are not absolute, who are trying to make the best decisions, who sometimes may not come up with something 100%, and they'll work on it, and there'll be other people who will say, I think that's wrong. New resolutions passed, work in progress, disciples course progressing, new ideas, something may be deleted, something may be added. It's just reality. We have to be mature enough to acknowledge that. Okay. And if that was a wrong answer, then tomorrow when I go on to give my class on Facebook, I will see we have no students. If that was the right answer, maybe we'll have 100 more. Okay. So now, and of course, Radhaman, you can write me personally if you have any questions. Radhaman he teaches, and so that answer was also important for him as a teacher, maybe more important just for everybody. But if you're teaching, you want to understand, okay, if this is a policy or this is a rule, you want to understand as much about it as you can. Why is it a rule? Why is it a policy? Is it ever broken? Does everybody follow it? Does anyone have problems with it? The more because that way as a teacher you can, as needed, when needed, have a broader understanding. Okay, so Krishna Koshni says, I believe it's safer to see devotees as persons who are on the way to develop all good qualities. Yeah, that's beautiful. There's common wisdom that if you don't like somebody or you have prejudices towards someone, just get to know them better. And they found that they did some statistical research about prejudices. So what they found is that people who had at least one friend from a particular ethnic group were 50% less prejudiced than the people who didn't have a friend. Let's say you have a Muslim friend, you'll be 50% less prejudiced towards Muslims. You have a African American friend, you'll be 50% less prejudiced towards African American. You have an Indian friend, and so forth. Like in ISKCON, amongst white male Americans who are considered the most racist people in the world, you'll basically see practically no racism or prejudice against Indians because we have so many Indian friends. So it would just be it would be very awkward to have any ill feelings towards people that you have so many friends with. We may feel a little reluctant about Muslims because we don't have, at least white American men usually don't have Muslim friends. So we may be like, oh, those guys, okay, lock my door, get my gun or something. Some false ideas about them. But when you get to know people, things change. So you're saying, we're on the way to developing all good qualities. And also, because they're sincere, they have the most important quality that we want to think. So Nadia Radha from Argentina says, I'm pretty tired to see how devotees keep fighting with each other and with me each time somebody has a different opinion. I'm suffering that situation again right now, and it doesn't help, develop enthusiasm. I have to get away from more and more devotees in the yatra, since there are many of them that are conflictive. Sorry to say, it really is true. Many other young devotees have the same realization, so I guess not only my experience, just hang out with your friends and eat pakoras. You'll be okay. Why is it so hard for us to not fight? It's Kali Yuga. We're proud, false ego. We think we're God. These are all Prabhupada's answers. I believe, and this is a great question, And I'm going to throw this question back. I'm going to read this. I skipped over this a bit. Why is it so hard for us not to fight with someone who thinks different? That question I want to throw back to all of you. And I want you to answer it. Because this question can really make a huge difference in your life. Why does this person upset me? Why does their opinion upset me? Why do I feel this need to fight with them? I can't answer that question for any of you. And even if I could, I'd rather you answer it for yourself, because you'll come up with the best answer. And I think, Nadia, if you get the right answer for this, it's going to solve that problem of dealing with conflicted devotees. You won't have a problem with it anymore, because you'll realize that it's triggering something in you. And then if you can work on that thing so it doesn't trigger it, then when you see it, it won't bother you anymore. Because anytime something bothers us, it's just something that's being triggered by what they're doing. I mean, like Donald Trump triggers me because I have this thing about lying. It's just like, it's, we're Brahmins. Truthfulness. And we sometimes were asked to fib to sell a book. And it's something that I despise. It was really, really hard for me, really. And to see a leader lying, and Prabhupada saying, what Prabhupada said, the cause of epidemics are liars, lying. So I blame, Donald Trump blames China, but I think it's his lying that created the pandemic. Anyway, maybe not, but Prabhupada said epidemics are caused by lying because it contaminates the air. So when I see him lying, it's like I just go, ah! But it's my problem because I have to confront. Maybe I don't like him lying because I lied in my life. That could be, right? So when he lies, I'm like, maybe I'm seeing myself, 40 years ago, lying to someone to get them to buy a book, or fibbing. And it went so much against my grain that I'm like traumatized by liars. Who knows? It could be. So that's why this question is so important. I believe even when someone is expressing an offensive point of view, we should not fight with a person. You can go away. We had a discussion on this on our class on Saturday night with the Chinese. And she was asking me, and I have my little joke. We had a great class about this. If you can look at that class, because we had two of my disciples are psychologists, and we were talking about criticism, and they explained like a process they use to help people with criticism. But I have this little joke. When you hear a devotee criticizing, they're talking to you, and you say, "Excuse me, Prabhu, I got to go to the bathroom." And you just run and go to the bathroom and just stay in there long enough till they forget what they were going to talk about. And every time they want to talk, criticize someone, you say, "Oh, Prabhu, I got to go to the bathroom." After a while, they'll kind of figure it out. Why do you always have to go to the bathroom every time I'm criticizing someone? Well, what do you think? I don't want to hear it. Okay, Nadi says, I want a husband that supports me like that. Some of us are happy serving Guru, deities, devotees. Husband is a devotee too. Kids too, and other women. It's like to have a career. That's okay too. Yeah, everyone's different. And so, what if some devotee comes to me and says, I want to get married, I don't want to get married, I want to do this, I don't want to do that. I'm just trying to help them figure out if that's real, if that's what they need, if that's going to help them. And that they don't have some, strange reason for making that decision, which would only prove to be temporary, and they would find that was a bad decision in the future. So that's what I would do. And then whatever we discover is right for that devotee, then we encourage that. So, hallelujah. That's the way, that's real. That's what Sat Maharaj says. It's, be real. Just be real. That's all. Because that's all you can be, and that's the platform you have to act from. So Sanatani, all the way from Nori says, it's so true. Communication about this is so important before marriage. But what to do when this was the deal, when marriage happened, and down the road the man woman change opinions. Let's say the man suddenly doesn't want to work anymore and pushes his wife to work, or the Mataji feels pressure from society to work. What to do? Yeah, that's a whole issue. That I would say, Sanatani, I would say my short answer for that is the word maturity. Because the reality of marriage is, especially if you marry young, people change, obviously. And so, the 22-year-old you married is much different when he or she is 45 or 50. And I can't say for everyone 100%, but obviously some difference. And so, my wife, when she was avid preacher, she joined in New York, very fired up, likes to speak. And as with many women, after they have children, they change. It's a different mentality. I would say, why don't you help me? Like when our daughter was younger, I'd say, why don't you help me? I'm doing this preaching. She says, like, I'm in mother mode. It's just a different mode. So a lot of women go into mother mode, and it brings out things that they didn't realize were in when they were young and they didn't have kids. They were more concerned about the house and career and finances and community and schools. And so it's inevitable, and now she said, when I was young, I wanted to be a forest ranger. I just loved the forest. And she said, now I have this desire to have land and cows and this, and bring people over and educate them. And that was never spoken about, even remotely. When we were first married, I couldn't even imagine it. And she probably couldn't have imagined it either. So now you see that people change, which is normal, and the word is maturity. We have to, I think, like, if I married a woman, I said, you never will ever have to work. And it came to a point where I was incapacitated. I would just say, I know I said that, but now what can we do? And she'd say, sure, I understand. That's maturity. Or I could see that you want to retire and I'm still young and we still need money. I'll do it. That's maturity. So to hold people and say, well, you said this and now you're breaking your word, and create conflict over that is immature. Because life happens in all kinds of nuanced ways, and we have to deal with those nuances as sensitive, caring, mature people. And if you're not sensitive, caring, and mature, you're going to have a really hard time being married unless your spouse is just willing to do and feel whatever you do and feel, which is not really normal. I mean, it could happen, but generally not. There's my Shiva Tilak coming again. I have to find the spot where there's no Shiva Tilak. Yeah. Okay, we're almost getting to the end. I have a lot of work to do. We're giving a course today, our first lesson in London. There's a few things I have to prepare for the devotees that are helping me. But this is such an important topic. We'll get through all your questions. I just may answer them more shortly than normal. This is kind of a bad backdrop. Let's get a better backdrop. Like books are a better backdrop, right? Okay, how's that? That makes me look smarter, right? I always used to think if you wear glasses, people will think you're smarter. If they think you're smarter, they'll listen to you. Did you know that? That's why part of the psychology of a sannyasi, because the more you respect someone, the more you can hear from them. So naturally, when someone officially renounces, you respect that because that's not easy, and so you can hear. So, should I get a pair of glasses? Just clear glasses and wear them, and maybe my preaching will become more powerful. Okay, well, at least we have books. That makes me look like I must know something. Okay. Christe says, I cannot clarify one thing. If we are not supposed to think nor speak poorly of other Vaishnavas, then how should we deal with situations where we encounter seemingly incorrect behavior? You take it up one-on-one with authorities. in an unoffensive and compassionate way because you want to help the situation. That's it. That's the answer. Only took me 50 years to come to that. You know, if you ever hear me give an answer in like 3 sentences, it's because it took me 50 years to figure out the answer. Not that I just figured it out. We had mentioned this, Christe, that there's Vaishnava etiquette, and you want to follow proper etiquette in dealing with problems. How to know when we are allowed to share our feelings with somebody, and when we should just keep it shut. Let's say, okay, this is a good question. Let's say I'm really disturbed by the behavior of a devotee. And I understand that I don't want to offend the devotee, but it was one of those nauseating statements, and I'm really upset. And I need to process it. I need to talk to somebody. And I have a friend, and I'm saying, I just need to talk about this. I don't want to offend this devotee. I'm not offending him as a person. I just want to talk about what he said because it's very disturbing, because I think what he said could create a lot of problems in ISKCON, and it hits me in a particular way. So you talk about it to process how you feel about it so that you can better deal with it. That's not offense. And then, of course, you have to talk about it with somebody who's okay with listening to you and who's also going to be confidential. So that's fine. It's offensive when you are intently criticizing someone, putting them down because of pride, because of your own ego. It's not if you're trying to process your own feelings so you can overcome the negativity. If you're trying to improve a situation within a temple because you see the actions of someone are harmful, and that's your intent, then you just want to very carefully ensure that there's no criticism or offense in your heart or envy, but just the intention is to help. And if you approach your authorities that way and they see that, you'll be able to communicate. If they see you're also envious or critical, then it's going to become difficult. So that's what I'll say for now. You can meditate on that. Nadia says, Murti Mataji is Prabhupada's disciple, was a temple president a few years in Argentina. I was not in the movement, but all senior devotees always say those were the best years for the yatra. Such an amazing service. Well, I think that's a plug for women temple presidents, isn't it? Murti did, as temple president, amazing service. Sometimes Matajis are better temple presidents than men. There are scientific studies that show women can take care of many tasks at the same time, more than men. They are more caring, all signs of their natural mother instincts. Yeah. I don't doubt it, although you'll find many men who will say that they have so many defects that prevent them from being leaders and managers. So, you're always going to get that. So, what to do? Everybody's got a right to see the world the way they see it. And yes, Jyotirmaya, you can just WhatsApp me with your concern. Vrindavan Leela, Pandor Henson says, I do not liars, and I exposed the female devotee because she lies and tells everyone she is a nurse. She's not a nurse. I think it's dangerous when people lie and pretend they're medical. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I didn't freeze. Wow, that's good. How are the members of the GBC selected? Originally, they were selected by Prabhupada, and now they have a selection committee. And usually it would happen kind of organically, that you'd be showing the desire to be GBC. You now would have to go to the training, what do they call that college? There's a management school. It's like a few years. You'd have to go to that. And then there's a position before GBC, like a zonal regional secretary. So it's a whole process you'd go through. But if you want a position of leadership, I think most important thing to work on is your own interpersonal skills, because no matter how good a manager you are, it'll never work if people don't like you and you don't like them. This is not to you personally, Radhapriya, but to all of us. This is super, super important. So if you're ever thinking that you want to upgrade yourself into a leadership position, first thing you want to work on is yourself. Because if your own prejudices and your own dysfunctions can destroy relationships. Christy says, I think we still love ISKCON, just need to focus on positive. It's a big family. Each family has its own specifics. Yeah. In accepting GBC resolutions, a proof of our surrender to Krishna and Shastra. It's not necessarily a proof of our surrender to Shastra, because we may disagree with it. We may see there's still some work to do on the resolution, but it's our surrender to Krishna, because if we surrender to Prabhupada, we're surrendering to Krishna, and Prabhupada says, the GBC's ultimate managing authority, we have to accept that. So if women were not allowed to be Diksha Guru, can we accept that with humility and still have the female Guru as our Siksha? You can always have female as your Siksha, yeah. If GBC decides no, that we have to accept that, and they could change later. Next generation of GBCs could change. Anything's possible. So, yeah. That's the idea. So I think this is a good discussion. We follow what our authorities say, even we may internally disagree. We work to maybe change it if we can. If we can't, we accept it. And within our own lives, let's say the GBC says women cannot be Diksha Gurus. But Nadi, you find that Murti is like a guru to you as much as any other guru, and you feel that she's entirely qualified and so on and so on. Then you can have that relationship with her. Maybe you don't need a Diksha Guru, you're already initiated. But the kind of relationship you would have with any of your Siksha Gurus, you could have with her. So in that sense, it's kind of, that resolution ultimately will not impact you personally. It might impact the preaching, because when people say, do you have any female gurus, we have to say, no, we don't. And they'll say, why? And you may disagree with the reasons why we don't have it, and you can't wholeheartedly communicate. And so that may be a problem. But in terms of your personal relationship, it doesn't have to be a problem. So that's true. Prabhupada said pandemics are created by liars. We said epidemics, but when we think about how they are lying about this virus, I don't know how they're lying about the virus, but generally politicians, move up the ranks by lying. When Prabhupada's talking about health pandemics only, pointing out that problems and fights can be, no. You could see it as a pandemic if we fight, but I don't have the reference, but Prabhupada was saying, he was talking about lawyers in the court lying, and he said that it pollutes the air and it causes epidemics. There are no details. And I was just putting that together. We have an epidemic, and we have a president who's lied more than any president or any person I've ever known. Could there be a correlation? It's not a conspiracy theory. It was just a thought spinning through my head. Didn't write any articles about it. Won't write any books about it. It was just interesting. Something I would say, Nadia, an interesting thought, not a conspiracy theory. But ultimately, the coronavirus, the way devotees should see it from Shastric perspective is as a karmic reaction on society for the sins. You can think it was created by this one to manipulate this or that. And as many devotees have said, it really doesn't matter what caused it, because ultimately we know there are so many causes, but the original cause is that we're breaking Krishna's law, and therefore there'll be a reaction, and this is one of the reactions. So I'm going to go, because I have to continue working on preparing for this course later today. This is going to be amazing, but you all can't come because, oh my God. Kanama Kanana just resulted positive from COVID. My daughter has just told me she was spending time with someone who has the symptoms of COVID. Yeah, it's crazy. So that's, Hare Krishna, what to do. I'm in my office now. She's in the house. I guess she'll have a test. We'll find out. It's a pervasive problem. What can we do? Yeah. So, we live in a world where there are many sins being performed by others, and we get affected by their sins, unfortunately. So that's just the reality. You may be innocent, and your neighbor commits a sin, and then that smoke of that sin falls upon you. So that's what happens. That's what Prabhupada said. Lying contaminates the air, and it causes epidemics. Maybe some Ayurvedic physicians can enlighten us. Maybe some of you want to study that. It's interesting. Let us pray about Maharaj. It's not good to get COVID when you're older, which is why I've been staying put, not going out much. My daughter does service at the temple. That's the gamble you take. Okay, so I'm going to end now. We'll keep you updated on my daughter, and don't want to scare anybody. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.